gray pickup truck sped down the road, blasting heavy music throughout the area. Two guys, two brothers, just left the city to have a good rest in nature. Then, the one who didn't turn down the music sang along to the song, rhythmically tapping his fingers on the steering wheel. Richard had to endure all this, enjoying the view from the window. Of course, he loved hard rock, but from such loud sound his head was already cracking. Sam cannot be reached. He has gone into his own world. Just the road and music. Quakers are a funny name, aren't they? Sam grinned. It's like something out of a children's cartoon. You know, from morning programs for toddlers. That's what the characters are usually called. Well, you understand. Richard listened silently to what his brother said, already falling asleep a little. He no longer thought about what had happened. He wanted to come home as soon as possible, but the squeal of brakes brought him back to the real world. What's happened? Richard asked tiredly and focused his gaze on the road. There was a crowd of giant frogs ahead. They looked at the pickup truck with some curiosity, emitting a clear croaking sound. Like the most ordinary frogs, they kept a decent distance, but were still a little afraid of the car. The guys watched them in horror, unable to say anything. Crush them. Richard was the first to break the silence. Are you serious? Sam shook his head, not wanting to believe what was happening. I said, crush them. Your mother. Summer is a wonderful time. Although the sun had already hidden behind the horizon, it was still light outside. A pleasant cool breeze blew the pleasant aroma of leaves into the cabin. The warmth that had accumulated during the day was not going to go away until the night. And what could be better than camping at a time like this? Do you know why I love nature? Sam began, turning down the music. I can't even imagine. Richard's voice sounded relieved. You can't listen to music at full volume. Sam smiled broadly, and again one of the Slayer songs was playing at full volume. Oh my God. The city was left behind. Now the guys are under the power of a forest. We will arrive at the place very soon, Sam said. It's almost dark. Richard closed his eyes, leaning his forehead against the glass. It's summer now. It's not so dark at night. I know. All these trips are just very tiring. Just be patient a little more, and we'll arrive. Passing the next turn, a certain figure was caught in the headlights. A hunched, medium-sized silhouette crossed the road. Then, look. Damn it. Brakes squeal as a car nearly hits a mysterious pedestrian. After driving a little more, the car stopped. Who was that? Did we shoot him down? Richard was indignant as soon as he opened the door. They shouldn't. Sam quickly jumped out of the car and stood up sharply. His eyes widened in horror. The same pedestrian who almost got run over turned out to be a humanoid frog. Peeking out from the bushes, the creature examined the people, clearly frightened by what had happened. What is this? Richard rubbed his eyes, not believing what he was seeing. I don't know, and I don't want to know. Hurry into the car. Sam jumped into the car at the same speed. Next comes Richard. As soon as the pickup started moving, Sam glanced in the rearview mirror. Something came out of the bushes. Watching the guys go, Richard tried not to look, but his head turned back on its own. The rest of the way, it drove along the road in silence. The mood suddenly changed to depressed. The desire to relax in nature completely dried up. The guys were simply afraid to look around. At the forest, where one of those upright frogs the size of a man might be hiding, Sam didn't immediately notice how the gas was almost zero. Driving past a gas station, it was then that he noticed. Richard immediately got out of the car. As Sam began to fill the tank, he wandered along the shelves, fear giving him an appetite. My thoughts were confused. My eyes ran over various snacks. I took everything that came to hand. You heard, the Quakers began to show up again. At your age, to believe in such nonsense. This is true. I saw them too. Well, that's enough already. Scare away all your clients with your horror stories. Richard peered out of the bookcase to survey the conversation. 3 were men. One of them was a cashier. The other 2 looked like typical hunters. A couple of days ago, a whole crowd jumped out onto the road, surrounding Arthur's car, and he got into an accident. Arthur should have cleaned the glass properly. Then he wouldn't have crashed into that tree. Lord, Mark, you know him. He always looked after his car. While the speakers were arguing, Richard walked up to the cash register. The cashier was punching the goods, continuing to argue with his comrades. Richard listened carefully to their conversation, more and more afraid in his soul. Those same Quakers, those same big frogs, just the thought of the reality of their existence made my knees shake. After paying, Richard practically runs out of the store, getting back into the pickup truck. Did you pay for gasoline? Sam doesn't immediately notice the food in his brother's hands. Yeah, Richard answered briefly. Why are you so worried? Nothing. Let's just go back to town. It's better. Let's have a snack first. The pickup truck drove slightly away from the gas station and stood on the side of the road. Sam carefully takes a packet of chips and juice. While Richard had no intention of starting his meal, he looked out the window into the darkness of the forest, afraid to see the face of that green creature. Why don't you eat? I'll eat at home. Listen, brother, perhaps we imagine it all. If not, then it's just some dude in a hyper-realistic frog costume who decided to take a walk in the woods. Most likely, he ran away from some gathering. I don't know what to think. Then, in the store, 2 hunters were talking about certain Quakers. Lord, you believed in the stories of non-hunters with alcohol experience. Richard just sighed heavily and finally decided to start eating the chips. The guy silently had a snack and turned back towards the city. Several pairs of eyes from the forest watched the trail of the departing pickup truck. Sam pressed the gas pedal all the way. The pickup drove straight towards the Quaker. They managed to knock a couple off their feet. The rest jumped on the car, making Sam unable to see the road, and the pickup flew into a tree, crushing one of the green ones. For a moment, the brothers lost consciousness. The sound of the horn disturbed the forest symphony. Smoke was coming from under the hood. The pickup was no longer able to drive any further. Other Quakers hid in all directions. Sam was the first to come to his senses. The headache felt like hundreds of sledgehammers in his skull, and he could not stand on his feet normally. He fell out of the driver's seat, knocking out the door with difficulty, and crawled to the side. Then, are you alive? Came the brother's voice. Richard was trapped. His left leg was wounded. He himself could not get out. Sam looked in bewilderment at his brother writhing in pain, trying to sort out his thoughts. I'll call for help now. Sam went out onto the empty road. It's already completely dark. Few people would pass at that time. It's quite a walk to the gas station. Sam almost cried from the hopelessness of the situation. It's like you're in a crazy, scary dream, and you still don't wake up. Richard's scream was heard. The Quakers had already reached him. One of them, right on the spot, was swallowing the poor guy alive. Sam didn't have time to save his brother. He hid behind a tree, watching as Richard's legs twitched. His face and hands standing out through the skin of an upright frog. He was still fighting for life. After a couple of minutes, his legs were gone, and there was no way to save the guy. Not save and save. Sam crossed himself and ran out onto the road again. He ran and ran as long as he could stand, not knowing exactly where he was running. There was no surveillance of him. Sam did not hear the sounds of frog paws slapping or croaking. Hope for salvation kindled within him. Suddenly, at any second, the headlights of a passing car would appear. But this did not happen. The legs became weak. The guy's strength left him. Sam was no longer running. He was shuffling, falling at every step. Another couple of beaters, and Sam fell, not feeling his body. Fatigue took its toll. There is no more hope. At the last moment, headlights flashed in the distance. Sam stood up with difficulty. Peering for a moment, the thought occurred to him that he was imagining it. But no, someone was driving in his direction. The guy somehow crawled to the side of the road. Very soon the car will pass. They will save it. Someone grabbed his legs. Sam turned around. He didn't even scream. A green monster, a frog the size of a man, dragged him into the forest. Moving freely on its hind legs, the car drove past. The driver did not even suspect that he had almost witnessed another Quaker feast. A fight had just begun in the bushes between two humanoid amphibians over a sacrifice.